Do you love mysterious stories shrouded under a veil of secrets, conspiracy theories, inexplicable coincidences, and everything in that spirit? Personally, I adore them. One of the best of such stories is actually the origin of Bitcoin. More precisely, its history is full of banks, mysteries, and bold theories. My name is Anna. Get yourself comfortable because today we will discuss interesting and mysterious connections and coincidences in the history of the main cryptocurrencies. So let's go. As you probably know, the anonymous developer, or perhaps a group of people under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto, first published the white paper of the first cryptocurrency back in 2008. The network itself was launched in January 2009, which means Bitcoin turned 16 this year. But we still don't know for sure who that mysterious developer was, although we have many versions. Of course, when talking about the history of Bitcoin, people often recall the supporters of online anonymity and the legendary mailing list of cypherpunks. Libertarians, anarchists, and hackers who likely stood at the origins of Bitcoin. This is certainly incredibly interesting, but there's one much more radical theory that suggests Bitcoin may also be connected to intelligence agencies. Back in 1996, employees of the National Security Agency, or NSA, proposed the article titled "How to Make a Mind: The Cryptography of Anonymous Electronic Cash." Interestingly, the article discusses the advantages of an electronic money system, digital signatures, and crypto systems in which the user has a secret key and a public key. In addition, the properties of transactions also touch on issues of privacy, integrity, and reversibility. Doesn't that, ring a bell? All of this, of course, strongly resembles Bitcoin, which, through blockchain technology, achieved transaction irreversibility and solved the so-called double spending problem. By the way, the issue of double spending also appeared in NSA article. Let me remind you that the Bitcoin white paper literally begins with the words that Satoshi was able to solve the double spending problem. Could Satoshi have been inspired by the 1996 work and proposed his solution? Well, perhaps. In the Bitcoin white paper, however, there is no reference to this article in the sources. Could intelligence agencies have already been thinking about Bitcoin back in 1996, and could this all be a part of the so-called Bitcoin lab leak hypothesis? Well, who knows, because there are several coincidences in the works that catch the eye. In the sources of an NSA work, there are references to the works of the famous American cryptographer David Chaum, known in the cyberpunk community, as well as cryptographer named Tatsuaki Okamoto. And again, doesn't that name just ring a bell? That is why it's not surprising that the boldest conspiracy theories claim that American intelligence agencies may actually control Bitcoin. Let me remind you that we don't know for sure who Satoshi Nakamoto is, and within the framework of the hypothesis involving intelligence agencies, we also do not know whether this developer released Bitcoin in coordination with the agencies or without the NSA's permission. It turns out that Bitcoin could have been created to test the global transaction system and study human behavior in conditions of complete decentralization. It seems we're unlikely to learn the whole truth, well, at least in the near future. But here's another remarkable fact in favor of this theory. Edward Snowden has previously claimed that the NSA allegedly closely monitors Bitcoin users referring to certain documents. By the way, the SHA-256 hashing algorithm that underlines Bitcoin is also, a development of the NSA. Another interesting coincidence, right? What do you think? Are all of these arguments convincing enough, or are intelligence agencies not involved with Bitcoin? Write what you think in the comments. So, according to other conspiracy theories, Bitcoin could have been created to be used in the darknet. In the early years of the Bitcoin network, an anonymous marketplace called Silk Road appeared on the internet that the first cryptocurrency became the primary means of payment. Silk Road allowed users to anonymously purchase illegal goods, whether drugs, weapons, or counterfeit documents. Many believe that Bitcoin did not accidentally find itself in the center of events related to illegal activities. Some even believe that Silk Road was an experiment in using cryptocurrencies under conditions of complete anonymity. Another mystery surrounding the origin of Bitcoin is the digital Satoshi treasure, or rather the coins that were mined in the early years of the network. The Bitcoin blockchain is transparent and anyone can trace transactions. If you study the early blockchain, you can find that in early stages, Nakamoto mined about 1 million Bitcoins. Sometimes they are also referred as Satoshi's pattern coins, as we do know who their exact owner is. These coins have never been spent, and today their value amounts to just billions of dollars. Why are they not spent? Some believe that Satoshi has died, while others think that it is a kind of reserve and in the future Satoshi will decide to use them. Some speculate that he could crash the market if he decided to move his crypto. I mean, having 1 million Bitcoins right now in your crypto wallets, that sounds very appealing, right? By the way, sometimes in a blockchain you can trace how certain balances from the Satoshi era do come into motion. Do you think that it could be the creator of Bitcoin little by little withdrawing it from unknown addresses? But what if that million remains motionless just because Satoshi Nakamoto has died? There is also such a theory. The first person in history to whom Satoshi sent his Bitcoins was Hal Finney. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2014 from a severe illness called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Hal Finney was one of the early cypherpunks, was at the very origins of Bitcoin and corresponded with Satoshi. Therefore, many are convinced that Satoshi and Finney are the same person. There is another theory suggesting that the Bitcoin remain motionless because their owner is serving a prison sentence. The head of the criminal cartel, Paul Leroy, is a software developer in cryptography and is currently serving a prison sentence in the USA. The time that Satoshi stopped communicating roughly coincides with the time that Leroy was taken into custody. Once, Paul Leroy used fake documents that featured the name Satoshi. Doesn't that also, sound very familiar? By the way, Paul Leroy is a C++ developer, meaning he specializes in a programming language on which Bitcoin was written. Additionally, in the past, he also drafted technical documentation for his software in a manner similar to the Bitcoin white paper and also in English. Some are convinced that they have stylistic similarities too. And the pseudonym Satoshi he used long before Bitcoin appeared. So what do you think? Are these convincing arguments? However, the most convincing version of Bitcoin's origins remains its creation by the hands of early cypherpunks. At least, Satoshi could have been inspired by their discussions in the mailing list. Most of them deeply shared libertarian beliefs, as well as principles of decentralization and individual autonomy. Perhaps Satoshi shared similar ideas, as in the Genesis blog there is a hidden message. It refers to the headline of The Times from January 3, 2009 that reads, quote, "Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." Therefore, I think Satoshi wanted to hint at the problems of the traditional financial system and offer his solution to this ailment in the form of the orange pill, Bitcoin. I think that's it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next video, and I'll see you in the next story.